My Adventures with Superman is the most recent incarnation of our favorite caped hero that has just finished airing on HBO Max. If it wasn't already obvious, I'm a bit of a Superman fan. I've really enjoyed a lot of the more modern retellings of Superman, the way in which he has been kind of used as a way to show what it's like to be a hero. He is, at his core, the most stereotypical hero. He was the first superhero, if you want to call him that. And as a result, he's someone that can be used in a lot of different ways to convey a lot of different things about being a hero and saving people. I do think, though, that this version of Superman in My Adventures with Superman is my favorite, and I think the best of the more modern incarnations, that kind of post-Man of Steel era. I'm not including Brandon Routh's Superman Returns, because I feel like that's a weird middle ground between old Superman and new Superman, and I feel like this is different than most of the new Supermen, and I really like it. So I guess we're going to do a full deep dive of the whole season. I'm going to go episode by episode. We're going to look at the whole thing from start to finish. Episode 1 begins with young Clark doing young Clark things. We've seen this all times. It's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, I'll be honest with you. I kind of wish we didn't see all these, look at Clark when he's a kid, realizing he has powers, and it's like, oh, ooh. My least favorite one is in Man of Steel, when he sees everyone in like X-ray vision, and he's like, oh, what's going on? It's all X-ray. That's boring. I didn't like that. I didn't mind this one. It's okay. But then they do a flash forward to Clark now, and I like this modern Clark. To kind of give this for the whole show, I like this version of Clark. He's younger. He's kind of fresh out of school, just getting started in the Daily Planet, and I think he's played very well like that. He's still this naive homeboy Kansas kid, you know? I like the Smallville narrative part of it still really feels like he's this country town farm boy, and I really like it, and I think it's well executed. However, when we first meet adult Clark for the first time, he saves a cat. Literally, he literally saves the cat. For those of you who don't know, this is a literary term where if you want someone to like your protagonist, the first thing you should make them do is save a cat. There's a whole book about it, and the first thing he does is save a cat. And I was like, okay, well, I guess he has to, right? He's Superman. How are we gonna know I just thought it was a fun little, oh, he saves a cat. But I like how they've now, immediately they start the show off with Lois and Clark kind of on these two journeys. And I really enjoy how much Lois is a very integral character for this series, and Jimmy as well to an extent. But I think Lois's characterization in the show is awesome. I really like Lois Lane in the show, and I think she balances well with this modern version of Superman, and they both have this cool little like young person, fresh out of college vibe to them that's like, I want to take on the world and I want to be great. And Lois says that with her reporting, and Clark has that with his like literal superhero-ness. And Jimmy's also in the corner being like, hey, I'm also here, I'm also Jimmy. So episode 1 is just kind of setting up everything, and I like the way they establish Clark's characterization, his clumsiness, this burgeoning romance between him and Lois. I also think is really cute. I like how they're kind of like very low on the rung of the Daily Planet people, and they're trying to like do what they can to be seen by Perry, and also how this then eventually connects to this idea that Clark is Superman, and they're going to try and chase Superman as this idea of like, if we can capture this guy, then this is what's going to be our big break. And Clark's like, well, kind of don't want to do that because that's me. It's kind of similar to the whole Peter Parker Spider-Man thing. Get pictures of Spider-Man, but this time it's Superman. But episode 1 also introduces the big bad of this show. Now, going into the show, all I had really seen was obviously the stills and the trailers and stuff, and I liked the aesthetic of it. The character designs in the show, and I'll continue to go talk about them as the episodes go and get more and more interesting character designs. It blends this anime style with the older Warner Brothers cartoons from 2000s, like the Flashpoint movies, and also like Justice League Unlimited and Batman Beyond, and those like early 2000s Warner Brothers stuff. And I think it blends both styles really well in that it kind of comes off as its own new modernized animated style. And like they wear their anime influence on their sleeve, which we will get to in terms of the way in which they introduce this kind of main big bad. Now, I didn't know who the villains were going into this. Obviously, we were like, whatever, there's a new animated Superman show. You can kind of sell people on just that alone. We don't need to see anything else. And maybe this was in the trailers and I didn't see it. But at the end of this episode, we get kind of introduced to the main villain of this story, which is these like mech people. Clark, of course, realizes he has to save the day, and so he defeats the mechs in this like fireman suit because he doesn't want to be seen. And I like this as a kind of the classic, the costume before the costume type thing. These people who have like captured new future tech, which is awesome. And they have like mech suits and it's all lasered. And I was like, hang on, how did they know I like mechs? How did you know I like mecha anime? And then you combine that with the Superman show, I'm in. I'm just like, I from the very first episode, I was like, this is everything. I'm not even, whatever they do from now on doesn't matter. I'm going to enjoy this show. And I have. So they introduced the villains. And I like how throughout the season especially, this introduces the threat of it being this the technology itself is the threat. They're able to bring in different people to kind of help draw this technology, and this technology may or may not be linked to Clark, and I think that's a really clever way to tie the hero and villain story, which we will get into. The mech design and the animation and all of that is classic animated fun. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's really cool. So that's episode 1. The stakes have been set, the characters have been established in a way that I think was very, very clever. And moving on to episode 2. So episode 2 sort of carries over from episode 1. Clark's realizing that he has to do all this Superman stuff, and that's clever. I like how the episode opens with him going back to the ship and talking to Jor-El, his father, and Jor-El just doesn't speak English. He speaks like Kryptonian or whatever, and Clark is like, whoa, what the hell? And just like stops. I thought that was a clever little touch. I don't know if that's been done before. If it has, then I am not as well read in Superman as I should be. But I think that was a very clever way to kind of go, oh, look at that. Jor-El is just the guy. He's just this alien dude. And of course he doesn't speak English. Why would Clark somehow innately know his language? I thought that was very clever, but he gets the suit, the classic Superman suit, and I like the way the suit is designed in this episode and this show as well. Lois and Jimmy are trying to figure out who Superman is because that's going to be their big break, and so they're still working on that, and Clark goes back and does this whole, like, what am I? Who am I? What is Superman? What is this thing? And eventually, those A and B stories come back and meet as Clark has to fight against this magic person who has this cool suit and goes, like, ballistic in it. And we introduce Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, who I think is Deathstroke. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but it's definitely Deathstroke, right? Like, certainly, it has to be. But I really like the way in which this person is powerful because of their tech. And obviously, Superman's 2 major weaknesses, one is kryptonite and the other is magic. And I like how this, I don't know whether this was purposeful or not, but I like that, for me, the show posited the idea of like, well, what is technology if not magic? You know, advanced tech is almost indistinguishable from magic. So in a way, it would also still be able to harm Superman. And I thought that was very clever, and I liked it. And I like the way in which it kind of sets the stakes that from the very beginning, this is a threat that Superman needs to be wary of because he can't just ignore it like everything else. These are creatures that, or like technological beings that can harm him and are dangerous, obviously, to more than just himself, but also to Metropolis as a whole. I thought that was very clever. So I like the way that this episode really set up the stakes for the conflict and also introduced a couple of the minor villain characters who will come back throughout the season. Episode 3, more fun Lois and Clark adventures. I love the way in which the 4 news people are introduced in a way that I was like, oh, this is so anime, and it's very fun to watch them be like, and do the poses and do the whole, the sports guy, I'm the news sports guy, and I thought that was really funny. I don't know why, it just takes that little, it's a show that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I like the way in which this show really balances that, and like, it's a thing in animation nowadays, which I absolutely adore, in the way in which the writers of these shows are so skilled to make like these incredibly intense and serious moments and balance them out with just like absurd comedy. Adventure Time does it really well. There are like a lot of these like other Cartoon Network shows, anime have done it for a long time, but the way in which they balance these very serious moments with this just humor is really well done in the show. And I don't think at any point it detracts from the actual stakes and the actual like compelling emotional narrative of the series. More villains, more Superman fighting. It's just kind of classic. I mean, I do like the show is very conventional in terms of the way in which it does the whole, you know, third act villain type thing. It's classic, but I don't think it ever overstays its welcome. And because the narrative of Lois trying to be the best reporter is still there and is also really compelling, Superman is not the only drive for this show. It's kind of like the way in which it frames the plot. It has all of these other characters that are also really interesting that it like sprinkles throughout the show, which I really, really like. This episode also ends with this interview between Superman and Lois, and then he flies off and then Clark comes through the door. Probably the only gripe I have with Jack Quaid's performance of Superman is that I think that his voice differences between Clark and Superman are very similar. I think they sound in a way that if you listen to like Christopher Reeve, I'm gonna do it. I know it's like every Superman fan, Christopher Reeve is the best, but I just think his version of like changing back and forth between Superman and Clark Kent is like the gold standard, because the voice that he has, like when he talks to Superman, he talks like this because that's the way Superman talks. And then when he talks like Clark, he has this kind of like weird, and it's, you know, this very classic, like, is fast talking character and strong, slow moving, but I like the way in which he very uniquely differentiates the way he speaks as Clark as opposed to the way he speaks as Superman. And I think that both of those versions of him, of what makes up Superman, are both exaggerations. Superman is an exaggerated confidence, and Clark is this exaggerated introvertedness. Whereas the actual person of Superman fits somewhere between the two. And I think Jack Quaid just does two voices. He just sounds like Clark, and then he just sounds like Superman. So that's the only kind of gripe I have with this episode, but that's fine. I think it works because it's a young Superman and he's still figuring out what it means to be these two different personas. I'll let it slide. But just something to note that I thought was interesting. And he's not the only one. I think a lot of the modern Superman struggle with this. It's the kind of difficult thing about playing a dual character like a superhero. I like how at the end of the episode, Clark realizes that in order to help Lois, he has to give up that level of fear that he has for people to know who Superman is. And I think that's a really clever way to kind of tie into the whole idea of the Superman and Lois dynamic, that he goes, well, if I want this person to succeed and I want her to do the things that she wants to do, I need to give up some of my own sense of fear, because in actuality, it's an insecurity that I have about Superman not being this guy. And so in order to make Lois happy, I should reconsider that. And I think that's very clever. Episode 4, more Lois and Clark adventures. They go to this dinner with Jimmy as well, and they try to get some more information about this Ivo character. And while they're there, they have to find out more information. They do some extra digging to get some extra things, and in doing so, uncover that Ivo is actually maybe doing some bad stuff. Obviously, Ivo, creator of Amazo Android, classic Superman villain. In this case, I like the way in which he's almost like a kind of Iron Man type tech billionaire suit dude. I think that's very clever. I like the way Lois and Clark bounce off each other in this episode. I think their relationship dynamic from the very beginning of the show is really well done. It's very, very well written, and I really enjoy just their interactions. That obviously most of these episodes are the two of them going on these adventures of trying to break into something or find information about something, and the way in which Lois is very driven, she wants to do this thing, and Superman has to, and Clark has to kind of hold back and go, well, I'm here because obviously I'm hanging out with Lois, and also like I want to get this, but I can't go too far because otherwise she's going to figure it out. Which, speaking of figuring out, at the end of this episode, Lois finally puts it all together and realizes that Clark Kent is Superman, and it's this big reveal where she's like, oh wow, like really? And that's the cliffhanger for this episode finish. But I like how she's mad. She's like, no, really? And she's pissed off about it. She's mad that he has like not told her the truth. And so that kind of leads directly into episode 5. Is that what we're up to? Yes, episode 5. This episode, Lois is trying to trick Clark into slipping up and revealing that he's Superman because she's pretty mad that he didn't tell her. Because, obviously, why wouldn't she be? I think that's a pretty fair thing to do. Jimmy also features in this episode. I feel like I haven't talked about Jimmy Olsen enough. Jimmy gets this cool little side project where he's like this alternative news guy, like reporting from the street, called Firebird. And I thought it was a very clever way to kind of give Jimmy more to do than just be like sidekick Jimmy. So he has this other thing where he's now going off, and it turns out it's the sports news guy. The guy that poses all the time is the other like alternate news guy that has like a beef with. So I like the way in which they give Jimmy this extra element of like the Firebird stuff. And also like the episode kind of goes into the fact that Jimmy's like, hey guys, what's going on? And Lois and Clark are just like ignoring him, and they're like letting him off on his own. And Jimmy's like, oh, why am I left alone? And I think that's a really, obviously it's very classic to do a whole, Jimmy Olsen third wheeling. But I think the fact that the episode really refers to it specifically and makes it a major plot point, which we will then get to in the next episode, is a really interesting way to give Jimmy more to do than just literally sideline him, but actually address the fact that he is being sidelined by these two people. This episode also has more of the classic, the villain, the robot stuff. I'm not really talking about them that much because, in my opinion, they're not the most important part of the show. The kind of villain of the episode type thing is less important than the dynamic between Lois and Clark specifically, and also including Jimmy. And I think what the show does really well is use that to frame this continuing relationship of Superman and Lois, and also Superman figuring out what it means to be a hero. But Amanda Waller and Deathstroke are in this episode more so, and Amanda Waller kind of sits in and you go, oh, hang on, this is more like this is maybe more than just tech weaponry. Maybe this is more of a government type thing. And I think that her inclusion in the show, especially to people who know who she is, which now that she was in Suicide Squad, people know who Amanda Waller is. People go, ooh, interesting, this is a connection to Task Force X, and maybe there's some more there's more to the villains than just robot people, tech people. So I think that was a very clever choice. And at the end of the episode, Lois and Clark finally have their thing. Lois jumps off a building to try to make Clark go and catch her. And it's a very intense moment where Clark's like, what are you doing? And she's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, you just jumped off a building. Like, what are you trying to prove? And I think there's this really intimate moment between them where they both go, well, what? Like, I thought we had something going here, but I can't not think about you as a liar now because you didn't tell me you were Superman. And I think that's great. I think it's a very clever way to look at the whole dynamic between them and the classic superhero narrative of the whole secret identity thing. Which then the final bit of this episode is Jimmy still being sidelined, still on the edge, and then being captured by Bigfoot. And I was like, like some sort of like big furry monster. And I thought this was like, oh, great, there you go. We're bringing it all back forward. Jimmy has gone on his own and now has been captured. So now they have to rescue Jimmy. So next episode, Jimmy Rescue. I think this episode was like the major turning point for me. I really liked the show up until this point, but I think from this episode onwards, there's this like major increase because they've set all the pieces up now. At this point, we're halfway through the season. Everything that needs to be addressed has been addressed. And they've basically placed all of these really interesting plot points in to now, from this point, they just go full on with it. And it's great. This episode, awesome. The way it opens with Lois and Clark trying to find Jimmy, and they still have this tension between them because they haven't really resolved this idea that Lois still thinks he's a liar and she still kind of resents him for not telling her anything. But they have to unite to save Jimmy because they're both like, you know what, whatever our differences are, we need to help our friend. And I think that's cool. That's a really clever way to bring them back together and to then spark, oh, well, if they're together, I guess they have to talk about it. So Lois and Clark are now kind of rescue Jimmy, and obviously there's perhaps this place is better fortified than they expected, and Clark has to do some things. There's this classic Superman moment where Clark protects Lois, and then she goes, how did you know you were bulletproof? And he goes, I don't, I just know that you weren't. And I was like, oh, what a classic Superman line. I was like, great. But there's, it sees that, oh, hang on, maybe he does care about me in a way that's more than just, maybe there's a reason he lied to me. So how do you further a relationship between two people who are kind of having a rough patch? Is you put them with Talking Ape and Robot Man. These two characters are awesome. I love them, and they have this beautiful little backstory segment where the two of them go that like, well, I was there's this like, because he's like a French monkey man, and he's like, I was a science experiment, and this was my doctor, and then something went wrong, and we had to escape together. And it's this beautiful little romance between the two of them, and I think it does really well to counteract between. Because it would be just depressing if the whole episode is Lois and Clark being like, oh, why, what's going on? But I think they have this really beautiful romance of the talking monkey and brain robot dude. And the design is awesome, and it's really, really cool. And I thought that was a very clever way to kind of juxtapose the two relationships that we see throughout the episode. And Jimmy also has his connections with these two. They all have this kind of like conspiracy base where he goes, oh, all of these things that I've been talking about in my sort of alternate news side, turns out they're all real, and that I feel very justified in seeing. And I'm like, oh, good on you, Jimmy. I'm glad you get some little character development and some people. You find your own people. I think that's wonderful. Good on you, Jimmy. But they all cause this massive black hole explosion at this scientific base, which of course brings in all the big guns and everything, and it becomes a whole thing. But as always, in the big climactic battle, they have a moment where they reveal that, hey, Clark, it doesn't matter that you're Superman. We care about you anyway. I like this whole moment that Jimmy is like, yeah, I knew all the time. Are you kidding me? Like, it's this whole thing, which I thought was like a really cute thing. And so the three of them have this moment where we don't care who you are. We're just, or Lois especially, she's like, I just wish you didn't lie to me. I don't know why you just didn't tell me. So they eventually rectify everything and it's all good. But they have this, sure, their relationship is fine, but there's a black hole that explodes. And I was not expecting the kind of ramifications of this portal opening but the next episode is awesome. So next episode, Lois and Clark are planning their date. It's cute. Clark then gets a visit from Mr. Mxyzptlk, and this is the best designed Mxyzptlk I've ever seen. I really love the way in which he kind of looks like this very anime-esque looking imp. And this jumps off into what becomes an eventual multiverse episode. Now, I know what you're thinking. Boo, multiverse, we've seen it. I don't want no Flash. I don't want more of this. But this is actually a good multiverse episode because they don't spend it just going, look at this, look at this. Hey, hey, look at that. That's Lois. Hey, you see that one? That's from the old show. There's definitely moments of that in this episode, but it is not the focus. They're just background Easter eggs, where the actual story of this is you have these two narratives. Clark thinking that Lois is in danger and he has to save Lois. Meanwhile, Lois meets like the super multiverse Lois group, who is sick. They're so cool. And she realizes that like, oh, I have to join. Clark's in danger and we have to help him out. And so the team of multiversal Loises go to rescue Clark because obviously Mr. Mxyzptlk is causing interdimensional chaos and they need to stop Superman from unleashing him into the world. Meanwhile, Mr. Mxyzptlk he basically does trick Superman, and he figures out that he gets Superman to give him his hat. And obviously, the reference to those of people who know who Mxyzptlk is, the hat is the classic outfit, and he puts it on and he becomes super duper powerful. And then they have this whole moment. Meanwhile, Lois is kind of like investigating in the Lois area and finds out like extra stuff about Superman, which maybe she wasn't meant to find out. And also this idea that the multidimensional Lois groups are just full of the really good Loises, like the ones who are like the few multiversal Loises who have like actually become really successful. It's very similar to the Spider-Verse people, where you have to be of a certain caliber to join the multiverse Spider-Verse things. In this case, you have to be a very smart Lois. And I think Lois has this existential crisis where she goes, am I not good enough as a Lois? Like all of these other Loises have done far more before I have. Like, am I the deadbeat Lois? What's going on? And I think it's this really clever way of humbling our characters in a literal episode where there is multiversal problems with an interdimensional imp called Mr. Mxyzptlk. There's this character moment where Lois goes, am I not enough? And you're like, and I was like, wow, awesome. What a great way to kind of look at the way in which Lois sees herself, especially after this whole season. We've seen her as this incredibly capable young woman. Suddenly it puts it all into question and she goes, oh, well, these other Loises are better than me. What can I do? But eventually they end up saving the day. Lois and Clark end up defeating Mr. Mxyzptlk and take off his hat. And everything goes out, and they save the day and they escape back to their own world. And Lois and Clark have a little kiss, which is cute. And then Lois goes back home and finds this orb that she has from the Lois ship with all the other Loises. And Mr. Mxyzptlk intervenes as he does. And Lois sees this vision of Clark like destroying people and killing people and like destroying Metropolis. And she has this moment of like, oh no, if I'm a bad Lois, are there bad Clarks? And this is great as a way in which to introduce the classic like Superman bad narrative, which has been done multiple times and obviously is the kind of integral to like, a character as powerful as Superman is. It's Lex Luthor's whole ethos. If Superman is all powerful, he can't be all good. But in this case, putting that, at least at first in the series, into the hands of Lois is a great way to show, hey, maybe the person I care about is capable of harm in a way I didn't comprehend before. That's very clever. So this sparks this whole problem, right? Lois is suddenly now recontextualizing everything she can as to go, how do I stop Superman from becoming a bad Superman? What can I do to make Clark good? And that now has tainted her perception of him in a way that I think is a very clever character choice because it complicates their relationship. Lois and Clark, in the course of these like 10 episodes, go through so much, and it's great. It's so well written. Their relationship is what I think is the core of the show, and is why I've spent this long talking about that alone, is because that's what the draw is to me. And all of this other superhero stuff is great, and it's just a classic animated TV show stuff, but it's this characterization in this show that is what I think makes it so incredibly good and why it's, I think, the best versions of modern Superman. So this episode begins with Clark trying to save everyone, and I mean everyone. I think this is the classic thing that, like, I think Cory Barlog said that if he ever made a Superman game, he'd make it about the fact that Superman can't save everyone. And this episode kind of looks at that idea of Superman trying to save literally everyone he can, and as a result, like, drives himself to exhaustion because he hasn't stopped. He just keeps saving people and keeps saving people because, you know, there's only so many hours in a day, and you can only save so many people within those hours. And Lois is very worried at this point, but she's worrying about testing him, right? If she does anything, she's worried that he could snap and he could turn bad. And so she's kind of masking her words in a way that she's addressing Clark because she's scared that she doesn't want to turn him into bad Superman. Meanwhile, Vicky Vale is introduced in this episode. Vicky Vale, of course, famous DC character Vicky Vale, and she is now tasked with Lois and Jimmy to write an article about Superman. And her article is all about how Superman is bad. And Lois is like, no, hang on, he can't be this bad. And I think she's kind of, especially after what she has just seen, she's really trying to reject this idea of Superman being a bad person. And so Vicky does all of these interviews with all of these people, and everyone's like, yeah, Superman is whatever. No one really likes him. And Lois and Jimmy are like, oh, quick, we need to convince her otherwise. And so she does interviews with other people, and Vicky's like, well, you guys are biased reporters because obviously the people that you're going to bring me to are going to be pro-Superman because you're pro-Superman. And I think it's a really interesting way to incorporate the bias, but also make Lois question her ideals about what Superman is, because everything she wants Superman to be perceived as good because she wants him to be good because she wants Clark to be good. But there's now this common thread throughout this episode of what if Superman isn't as good as we think he is. And I think that's very interesting, especially as Superman starts to get more and more exhausted. And Lois and Jimmy try to stop him. They go, hey, Clark, we get that you're good. You don't need to prove yourself. We understand that people are saying that you're bad, but you don't need to continuously do good things because you're going to run yourself dry and you need to be careful. And eventually, like, he's not getting to a point where he's going to snap, but he is getting tired. He ends up saving this person and causes like this major accident, and everyone's like, whoa, what? Superman, what are you doing? Because the person was invisible. They can't see the person that he was trying to save. And he's like, and they're like, whoa, Superman's causing a car accident. This guy can't be that good. And Superman's like, no, oh no, what have I done? This is the problem. This is what Lois and Jimmy was talking about. But then he gets cornered by the big tech villains of this season so far, and they've all come back. Ivo is in his cool, like, Unit 01 mech suit, and he's captured by Amanda Waller and the General, and he's like, you're not a hero, you're the end of the world, or whatever he says. And then that's the end of the episode. Cliffhanger, what's going to happen? So episode 9, Superman's in confinement, and the General interviews him, and it's revealed that it turns out that the reason why the General and Amanda Waller hate Superman so much is because there was this event that happened that like killed a bunch of their friends when they were working on like some army-based thing. And they blame Superman for it because the tech is very similar. So it turns out the tech that we've been seeing throughout this whole episode, everyone thinks is Superman's fault, or at least the government and like Task Force X think is Superman's fault. And I was like, oh, this is clever, this is where you bring it back in. And he has the classic speech, you're super powerful. You can't be a hero, you're a weapon. You are nothing more than a manifestation of the technology that killed all my friends. And you go, as an audience member, that's great. That's a very understandable villain motivation. Obviously, we sided with Superman because we know that Superman obviously wasn't the cause of this problem. But it is a good way to humanize the villain in this story, this General, who has been very stereotypically, I don't like Superman this whole time. You don't know why. Now we know why. There's more motivation to his character. And obviously, Superman is saying this, and he's like, I didn't do what you think that I did. I've lived on Earth my whole life. I'm not an alien. Like, I'm just a normal person. I just have powers unlike anyone else. And so then the General has this crisis where he goes to Amanda Waller and he's like, what if we were wrong? Like, this guy is too young to have been there. And what if he's telling the truth? Like, what if we've captured this dude and we've done all of this work to stop Superman when in actuality, he had nothing to do with Zero Day, I think it's called. And Amanda Waller's like, no, we don't make mistakes. When Task Force X, he does a classic Amanda Waller moment where she's like powerful boss ass bitch. And she's like, no, I never make mistakes, but like, and everyone's like, oh, hang on, you have made a mistake. Superman didn't do that. And so she like throws the General out. While Superman's in captive, Ivo, like, his suit gets super powerful, and then he grows into like Godzilla Man and becomes this like massive Godzilla creature. And I'm like, oh, sick. Now it's like Mecha Kaiju Superman show. I'm all in. And Superman has this moment where he and Lois and Jimmy, he's like, maybe I am a bad person. Maybe I'm better off not being Superman. And Lois is like, no, you have to save the day, Clark. Don't you know? This is how it works. This is literally how it happens every single time. You save the day after having a crisis. And so he goes and he saves the day. There's this classic, like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us New Yorker moment from Spider-Man, where everyone from Metropolis like comes together to defeat the Godzilla guy. And it's really great. Who is Parasite? I think like In the show, they call him Parasite, and I think he's referenced as Parasite, which in the comics, Parasite is this really awesome villain. And this version of Parasite is nothing like that version of Parasite, but I still really like this version of Parasite, and I think it's very clever the way in which they have him as this like big pink Godzilla thing that like absorbs energy. So really cool design. Again, this show visually is awesome to look at and really great to watch. But the episode ends and it kind of feels like the end of the season. I remember watching the end of this episode being like, oh, there's still one more, right? And this feels like such a major climax. And so at the end, Amanda Waller gives this gun and goes, this is what we have to do. We have to kill Superman now with the last thing that Ivo ever gave us. And it's like, okay, we have to kill him. So then that's how they set up the stakes, I guess, of episode 10. We need to kill Superman. So now we get to the final episode, episode 10, The Hearts of the Father, or as I understand why they didn't call it The Sins of the Father, but that's pretty apt for this episode. I was wrong about episode 9 feeling like the conclusion of the story. This is very much the end of the season. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, whatever, chill. No. I was wrong. So it's Thanksgiving. Jimmy and Lois and Clark have all been promoted to reporters. Good on them, but they go and have dinner with Clark's family. Clark has, at the start of the episode in the cold open, gone back to Jor-El and been like, I know you sent me as a weapon. I don't want to hurt the people of Earth because they're my people. And then he goes back home and Ma Kent has this beautiful moment with Lois where she goes, as soon as Clark got his powers, he started getting scared about like hurting people, which that is Superman's biggest anxiety, right? As a character flaw, he doesn't want to harm people. And I mean that both in terms of his powers physically and also emotionally. If you look at Clark Kent as a kind of person who has too much of everything, too much power and also too much kindness, and he's worried about hurting those he loves. And I think that's a great way, that is Superman, I think, at its core, is someone who is too afraid that they might hurt people. Which, when you put the backdrop of Lois and Jimmy now knowing that this idea of there could be a bad Superman and Clark himself thinking that he could be a weapon, that is terrifying to him because he doesn't want to hurt these people. And so they have Thanksgiving, and in a reveal that rivals Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film, it is revealed that the general throughout this whole season is General Sam Lane, Lois's dad, which I feel like, I don't know, I just didn't pick up on that at all. I was completely blindsided by this. I'm sure your average fan probably was like, of course, but I was like, oh, I did not think that at all. So big reveal. I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that whole, oh, turns out it's going to be dinner with the family, but your dad's my main villain. Whoops, Green Goblin moment. I think that it was handled really well, and also the fact that the Kents just kind of don't like him, and it's like, you can't just, he's your girlfriend's dad, you can't just hate him. But he's also like, well, actually, he tried to kill me, so maybe it's a bit justified. But while they're hanging out or whatever, Clark ends up getting the device that Lois and Jimmy have that show him the bad Superman, and he's like, oh no. And he opens it up and he sees kryptonite. He touches kryptonite and he like obviously has a reaction to it. Drops it on the ground, and that triggers his ship to like come out of the ground. And then it sparks this whole final confrontation where it's revealed and Brainiac's symbol starts showing up on the ship, which I don't know whether that has been there the whole time and that all of the tech is like Brainiac based, but I was like, oh, of course, it makes sense now. So I think the main villain of the series, and probably going forward, is going to be Brainiac. Eventually, Clark does the whole fight-off. He and Jor-El team up to destroy the bad people, blah, blah, blah. Classic superhero stuff. He goes up and he, like, uses the kryptonite to break the ship and then ends up in space, and Jor-El sends him back because he's like, I understand your true purpose is to help the people of Earth. And he sends him back to Earth, where he meets Lois's dad. And Lois's dad's like, I'm going to kill you now. This is my final moment. And Lois comes in. And when he lands, he creates this crater. And as the sun rises, the sun comes further and further onto Lois's face. And I was like, oh, are they going to do... Because he's still, like, affected by kryptonite at this point. And it's like, oh, I wonder if they're going to have it so that as the sun comes over him, it kind of fixes the kryptonite problem. They didn't do that. I thought that might have been a nice reminder of why Superman is like, why Earth is so powerful to Superman, is like the sun, the rays of the sun is what pulls him out of like kryptonite sickness. But eventually Lois and her dad have a heart-to-heart. Basically, she's like, you can't kill Superman. He is the savior of our people. He's the one who fixed everything. You can't just kill him because you have this order to do so from Amanda Waller. And so he goes against Amanda Waller and he's like, nope, no false alarm, there's no Superman here, and he leaves. He does a whole like Batman, she turns around and he's like, Dad, you're gone. But I think this episode, the way at which it looks at both Lois and Clark's relationship with their father, and also as like problematic fathers who they don't agree with, and who still at the end of the day, both Jor-El and Sam Lane come to the conclusion that turns out maybe the way in which I expected you to be was wrong. And that was really nice. It's a cute little, again, characterization is at the core of this show. It is what makes this show really, really great, is by having incredibly talented writers understand the character motivations of these people, regardless of the superpowers. The superpowers are important, and they're a part of Clark's life, and they're a part of Lois's life, but the superpowers are emblematic of something that everybody experiences. It makes Superman relatable in a way that still makes him inspiring. That's the core of what Superman is. Batman is inherently relatable. It's cynical, it's human behavior trying to create good as humans can. But Superman is not that. He isn't a human. He's an awe-inspiring hero that you see do good things and makes you inspired to do good yourself. That's what Superman is. But at its core, the conflict that comes with doing good things is something that everyone experiences. And so by manifesting that as Clark being afraid to do harm, or at least to not do as much good as he feels like he can, is a great way to ground a character. And so at the end of this episode, Brainiac is revealed to be the main villain, probably. I really like the design. Again, these mech designs, awesome, really, really cool. And I'm excited to see what happens for season 2. So season 1 has finished, and I really like the show, and I really hope it gets renewed for season 2. Between this and Harley Quinn, I feel like Warner Brothers Animation is just doing really great right now. We're going back into this, I think, new renaissance for them, and I'm all here for it. As someone who has been in this universe since forever, Harley Quinn is great, and this is great. However, the caveat being, I am literally the target audience for My Adventures of Superman. This show was designed for someone with my exact Venn diagram of tastes, and as a result, of course I'm gonna like it. Of course I'm gonna watch the show and be like, this is amazing, I want more of this. This is like aesthetically and content-wise, this is everything that I want from a Superman show, and also stuff that I wasn't expecting from a Superman show. I didn't expect it to go all like mecha anime, but great, I'm so here for it. So I like it. I'm a big fan. If you like any of those things as well, give it a try. My Adventures with Superman reminds us why we love the character of Superman. It's character focused and puts the man first and the super second. And I'm so excited to see more. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this full series recapped, subscribe. I'll do more of these. If you like them, comment and be like, yeah, I like these. I'll want more full review things of shows. Ahsoka's currently airing. I might do one on Ahsoka because I'm finding that show very interesting at the moment. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment. What was your favorite episode from the show? Did you see the Sam Lane twist coming? Maybe you did, and you can go like, yeah, obviously, from like the very beginning. Someone's called the General, of course it's going to be Sam Lane. But thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.